today is the first of 4 consecutive Sundays on the theme of faith and environment. Each spring around Earth Day was Friday, our church devotes at least 4 Sundays to themes of the environment and faith. And today is our first one. Brian and Dan are great kickoffs for this 4-part series. Now to our presenters from Faith in Place. Let me introduce them. Reverend Brian Souter, star of stage and screen. What? I wrote this.
I'm actually the new starting point guard for the Chicago Bulls.
It's quite tall. You may have done that. Reverend Souter serves Faith in Place out of the Chicago office as president and executive director. The entrepreneurial vision and confident leadership of Reverend Souter is exponentially growing the impact of Faith in Place's mission to empower people of all faiths across Illinois to be leaders for cleaner environments and healthier communities. Reverend Souter's passion is empowering faith communities across Illinois to take measurable steps to connect the dots between faith, environmental justice, poverty, mass incarceration, race, violence, class, and health.
Sounds like a big
agenda.
What's he gonna do next year?
Intersectionality. His leadership is recognized as an award recipient of the University of Illinois Business School's Community Scholar and a Central Illinois Business 40 Under 40 winner. Are you still qualified?
I'm still qualified.
Okay. He grew up in Illinois in rural Tazewell County and received his Bachelor of Science from the U of I in Natural Resources and Environmental Sciences, Master of Arts in Religion from Urbana Theological Seminary, and Master of Business Administration from the University of Illinois. Reverend Souter is ordained by the Mennonite Church USA and worships with the Chicago Community Mennonite Church in East Garfield Park. Reverend Souter also serves as adjunct professor at both McCormick Theological Seminary and Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Evanston, teaching public ministry courses for future clergy and faith-based leaders on organizing for environmental justice. Joining Brian today is his associate from Faith in Place, Dan Hunshaw. Is that how you might say your name?
Good.
All right, good. Dan is the North and West Chicago Suburbs Outreach Director. Dan first joined Faith in Place in 2014 as a volunteer, working to gather grassroots support for the EPA carbon rules, and later the Illinois Clean Jobs Bill. In 2015, he joined our outreach staff to help with our smart energy programs in the western and northwestern Chicago suburbs. Dan grew up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, currently resides in Rolling Meadows, and is a member of Countryside Church Unitarian Universalist. His BA in Communications is from DePauw University in Indiana. And he previously volunteered with environmental education and advocacy organizations, including the John G. Shedd Aquarium, Sierra Club, and the Climate Reality Project. By living his philosophy, try to learn something from everyone, while spending time with many climate organizations, Dan's been able to develop a creative climate communication style that produces action. He strives to be a catalyst for positive, healthy change by connecting people's existing passions with Faith in Place's action-focused programs. Welcome to both Dan and Brian. So glad you're here today. Brian will be preaching at today's worship service at 10 o'clock in our sanctuary and online.
Morning, everyone. We titled today with the theme that you've been rolling with, what does God call us to do as a church? So we're going to be focusing on action, and you specifically wanted to talk a lot about advocacy, so we're going to focus in on there. Our vision, if you don't know a lot about Faith in Place, is people of diverse faiths and spiritualities leading the environmental movement to create healthy, just, and sustainable communities for all. And our mission is focused in on where environmental care and environmental justice intersects. And then we think that there's a really good nexus of faith-based earth care. Our mission is Faith in Place empowers people of diverse faiths and spiritualities to be leaders in advancing environmental and racial justice, providing resources to educate, connect, and advocate for healthier communities. We previously just worked in Illinois, but then in February, we actually started partnering with, I always say it wrong, both Hoosier and Wisconsin IPL, or Interfaith Power and Light. So we work in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. And you can read more on our blog if you want to know about how we conquered those, partner with those two states as well, to expand our mission to be more of a Midwest focus. Our 5 program areas are energy and climate, sustainable food and land use, advocacy, water, and youth empowerment has become a big focus for us as of late. If you want to know more information about all of our program areas, we can talk about them in the Q&A. Today, we're going to focus mostly on advocacy, since that's a big area that you wanted us to focus in on today. The way that we actually work, I always say that we can, come in and give an inspirational sermon, or we can do an inspirational workshop, but then what happens after we leave? You're inspired for a bit and you want to take action, but really what's going to actually, promote and move forward environmental justice focus in your house of worship. And that's if you have a green team. So our model is to work with green teams. We say they're groups of people of 3 or more. And basically you work forward for your goals, and we help support you in your goals to move forward and accomplish the goals that you see that are the best for your house of worship and your wider community. We have over 182 and growing green teams. I think I have 37 of them in the north and west suburbs. You have a green team, right? Because I actually partner with you, so that's great. And then Brian was going to talk. Oh, am I talking about this part, or is that you? This is you, right?
Yeah.
And then Brian's going to talk about our advocacy efforts.
So Faith in Place is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. We raise money from the public through foundations to fund the work that we do. An amazing organizing outreach team spread all across Illinois. Now we have 4 staff in Indiana, 1 staff currently in Wisconsin. We're actively hiring, again, to build up these green teams in communities. Green teams that are partnering with what's the assets of the local faith community, but what's also the need. And they're working on our program areas that Dan talked about. Maybe there's a need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the local house of worship, or there's air pollution in the community that needs some organizing. Maybe there's basement flooding happening on, so green water infrastructure programs can come in. Access to open space, so critical for health and well-being and the flourishing of a community. It's not equal across all communities. How do we increase access to open space, nature, parks, local food, building up that local food? This morning, as a little preview, I'm going to tell a very inspirational story about a community in Champaign-Urbana starting a local farm and how that transformed both the community and the surrounding neighborhood. We have a big need in a lot of our communities with youth that are high school age, needing something to do in the summertime. So we have an environmental leadership program where they learn about environmental leadership. As high school youth start to think about careers in environmental sciences as they go into college. And we do all that stuff that's place-based. It's in the community. We have an organizer in Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, a couple organizers in Waukegan, Dan working across the north suburbs, west suburbs, a team in Chicago. Now we're building out a team out of Gary and Milwaukee, also in Indianapolis, hopefully in Madison as well, as we continue to grow. Building this collective movement of diverse people of faith and spiritualities, taking care of our common home, the water that we all share, the land that we all share, the air that we all breathe together. Doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Baha'i, Wanaka Congregational, Mennonite, Unitarian, Zoroastrian, we all share these things in common and share a spiritual wisdom that causes us to further connect with ourselves, with each other, and with our common home. We like to say at Faith in Place, every day is Earth Day. So I know we're here on Earth Sunday, every day is Earth Day as we continue to build that relationship. I want to take you in a little bit of a different direction though. So we not only have Faith in Place, the 501c3, we have a separate organization. It's called the Faith in Place Action Fund. It's a sibling organization, but it's what's technically the IRS calls a 501c4. This is a political organization. So if you were worried about talking about politics this morning in the church building, well, it's good that you were worried. You were right to be worried. We're going to go there. Right? Politics. Because the Faith in Place Action Fund is allowed to do that per the tax code. And so the Faith in Place Action Fund allows our partner clergy and our green teams to get more involved politically in a legally safe way because they're participating as volunteers of the Faith in Place Action Fund. So it's my joy today to name you all as official volunteers of the Faith in Place Action Fund, and we're talking as Action Fund now, not as members of Winnetka Congregational Church. So don't worry, any lawyers in the room, we're good, we're good. So what does the Action Fund do? Well, it's a separate organization. Again, the donations that come to the Action Fund, they aren't tax exempt. They're simply people paying membership dues or donating, but it's not something you can take a tax exemption on because again, it does lobbying and political work. So we're doing lobbying and political work as people of faith and spirituality advocating for environmental justice. This comes out of a need where when we're transforming in community, it's not enough. We need to work at a much broader systemic scale in order to advance these sort of things. We need to move policies. We as a faith community, we can move millions of dollars in doing this good work, but we need policies at state level, national level that move billions and trillions of dollars to truly take care of our common home. We're talking about reports coming out that are speaking of the apocalyptic future that we're in currently and that we're going to continue to face as we go forward. So this is something, again, I'm setting it up. We need to be working at a little bit more riskier edges. That's my case to you all this morning. We need to be getting more involved in our politics so that we can transform our politics from our spiritual wisdom towards more care for our common home. So how do we do that at the Action Fund?
You were busy and stuff. I was supposed to let me in.
Let's see, trying to get it to move forward.
Yeah, you're gonna.
There we go. So one way is that we're just tracking bills for you. So if you're a green team and you want to know what the people of faith and conscience support in Illinois and in Indiana and Wisconsin, we're starting to track that for you with this very easy
This is not my turn.
initiatives that are going on. So right now we have up there some Illinois bills and some federal bills. We're building it out to also have Indiana bills, Wisconsin bills as we go forward. So right now you can go on this and you're like, oh, in Cook County, there's a ballot referendum coming up about the Forest Preserve ballot referendum. It's actually a really important referendum to have a small fee come in to really help advance our forest preserves. You can click on that, learn more, take action. You find a whole fact sheet there and ways to take action. We're working on environmental justice permit, HB 4093, environmental health down at the State House in Springfield. You can click on that link, read more about that. And then if you as an individual want to let your state senator and your state representative know, we have a setup where you just can click on that link. It'll automatically pull up your state rep, state senator. You can modify the message and hit send, boom. When you do that, you are one of thousands of people of faith and justice that are getting their voices out there. So we're building a movement of collective power of people from Winnetka to Marion to Waukegan to Palatine, from Indiana, Wisconsin, building this movement so we can be speaking out with clarity and a moral voice that we as people of faith and conscience care about this, and we need to see this made different. This is so important. We love Sierra Club, we love our legal partners, we love our other folks, but we are a unique voice as people of faith, distinct. We're not the usual environmental suspects. We're a different voice coming to our legislators and saying, this isn't a partisan moment, this is a bipartisan moment. We care about the common land that we share, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink. We need to be moving resources collectively to care for our common home, and we need to do it in a justice and equitable way. Just to give you a little testimony, what have we done already? In 2014, we passed a bill in Illinois called the Future Energy Jobs Act. We as people of faith and justice were very concerned about equity. We said, listen, if we're going to advance solar in Illinois, how do we make sure that folks that are in high unemployment neighborhoods that are experiencing 20%, 30% unemployment, how do we make sure those neighborhoods are prioritized to get access to the solar jobs? And we created the Solar for All program. This is a program that takes specifically people from high unemployment neighborhoods, the special emphasis on those coming out of the prison system. You heard that I have a passion for carceral justice, mass incarceration, class, racism, environment. These things are connected. We can grow the green economy while reducing recidivism rates by providing green jobs in communities that suffer most from high unemployment. And the same communities that suffer most from basement flooding Air pollution in Illinois and high unemployment communities, often communities of color, 4 times higher than other communities. Basement flooding because of the infrastructure, the sewer system, the street system being divested from happens more frequently. So we're starting to connect these dots. Illinois Solar for All program is actively getting individuals placed into employment opportunities with solar companies such as Servison or other solar companies that we've been partnering with. We can do more of this. That bill that we passed in 2016, Future Energy Jobs Act, was just a little bit that we could go forward in that direction. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. We're able to move into that direction. We need much more than tens of millions of dollars. Well, good news, in 2021, last year, right? We passed the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which many of you I'm sure participated in advocacy campaigns, different things we've been focusing on. That's gonna take that funding for solar for all, and I'm looking to Dan for a little help. Is it 5 times what it was currently? And continue to make that.
At
go
Faith in
forward.
Place, we empower people of faith to fight climate
This is
change.
a
But
video
addressing
about
the problem is
solar
not
for all.
enough. We want to solve it in a way that prioritizes those most affected by climate change's impacts. We want climate justice.
I do not know how to do that.
That is
Try to
why we
teach-
support the Illinois Solar for
try
All
that.
program.
Try that.
Traditionally, solar energy is only available for wealthier communities. Illinois Solar for All is designed to give low-wealth communities access to solar energy through incentives that make solar installations affordable
Well, you
and keep electric bills
visuals
down.
of, ways that we're working on keeping electric bills down.
The program is designed to serve people historically left out of the solar market. Low to moderate income households, people of color, and residents of environmental justice communities which are most impacted by pollution from fossil fuels. A quarter of the program's funds are reserved for projects located in these communities. Illinois Solar for All also trains citizens returning from the justice system or leaving foster care to be solar installers, and then incentivizes solar contractors to hire this new workforce. Access to a solar career can make the difference for someone returning from prison. These jobs provide resources that help build a just economy while increasing resilience to climate change for communities. Learn more about Solar for All and other just climate solutions by reaching out to Faith in Place.
Then I already kind of previewed for you the Climate Equitable Jobs Act. Is something that we've been working on since 2016, building collective grassroots power. We did over the course of 3 years, I know it was over 5,000 individuals participated through Faith in Place. And I think it was like 140 different events we did called Listen, Lead, Share, where we really went out to the community and said, what do you want to see in a clean energy bill that moves through the state legislature? And we created these 4 pillars as a result of that, of the community's input voice, promoting jobs, equity, and economic opportunity, especially in communities of color, reaching 100% renewable energy in Illinois by 2050, reducing the pollution equivalent of 1 million gasoline and diesel powered vehicles from the road, and achieving a carbon-free power sector by 2045 that creates community jobs in communities abandoned by coal-burning companies. This was a huge win for us because not only did we get the community input, then the community saw the resulting legislation that was crafted and pushed, and the community joined us in advocating for that piece of legislation. And here's what happens when you pass a piece of legislation: the real work starts to begin of implementation to make sure what you passed actually comes to fruition. And we have accountability to the community who said to us, this is what we want in the bill, advocated with us. So there's no way that we can move forward without continually to go back with and partner with the community, our dream teams, making sure that these things happen. One of the critical pieces that the Faith in Place Action Fund was very focused in on was the creation of 13 workforce hubs located throughout Illinois. These are going to be one-stop shop hubs where you can come and get all the training you need, the wraparound services. Maybe you need affordable housing, maybe you need childcare, maybe you need counseling, whatever it is that you need to get you ready to have a good job in the green economy. These workforce hubs are going to be created, maintained, and be provided going forward. We can dive further into that if you want. This is though on the Action Fund side, on the lobbying side. So these are actively how we're lobbying. You know, if you want to know where we're going, how we're working moving forward, this bill tracker is going to be critical for you to become familiar with. I would encourage you to set it as your home screen when you come up. So you see what's the latest piece of legislation that you can learn about that Faith in Place through our process with our board and our volunteers is determining we as people of faith can really make a difference and getting our voice engaged and activated and moving forward in that way. But we're not just doing lobbying at the Action Fund. We're also getting involved in some elections this year, okay? So now we're gonna put on our partisan hat, and we have a plan going forward. So the 2022 Faith in Place Action Fund is we're really building this thing, and we're building this thing first in this year so that we can continue to grow it through Indiana, Wisconsin, and following years. So we're gonna be doing something, we do something regularly called Advocacy Champion webinars, where if you're curious about this and wanna get more engaged, meet some of our wonderful staff from the Action Fund. Pastor Scott Onquay is our policy director. Christina Crost is our senior policy coordinator. Those two are amazing insiders. They're down at the State House in Springfield every week. They know the legislators, they're constantly talking with them, they're getting inside information, but they can't do their work without a strong outside grassroots force backing them up. We don't have the millions of dollars that the others folks have that are working on this, but we have such powerful community voices that legislators want to make sure they please, so they get what? Re-elected again, right? So we're constantly doing advocacy champion webinars. Be sure you check those out. We're creating an advisory board representing our diverse regions. So our vision is that we have essentially a policy champion, policy chair. We're still working on what the language is going to be, but it's going to be a volunteer. We have a job description for that volunteer. We're going to need somebody from the northern suburbs to do that. So maybe the Spirit's going to speak this morning, and one of you is going to think I might be the person for that. Who's going to serve on an advisory board? Someone from Southern Illinois, someone from Central Illinois, someone from Chicago, someone from the suburbs, someone from Northern Illinois. A volunteer position where you're going to be helping to coordinate who's running for election in your region, and you're going to be seeing who's running for election. And you're going to be sending them something called our endorsement questionnaire. It's simply a 8-question questionnaire, I don't know how to say that, 8-question questionnaire, where we're going to send that to all the candidates that are running for state rep, state senate, and then we're going to focus on statewide. So this is everything from the governor's race, secretary of state, treasurer, and it's going to give those candidates say, look, what do you think about advancing climate change? Equitable legislation. Do you support it? Yes or no? They're yes or no questions. Do you support advancing green water infrastructure in the community? Do you support? So it's our key policy issues. They're going to have to answer yes or no. If they answer all yes, it's like when I went through baptism, the pastor told me, all the answers are yes. Yes, yeah. So it's the same sort of thing. So if they submit their questionnaire back, it's all yes. Our policy champion, our volunteer is going to organize all those, make a recommendation to the Faith in Place Action Fund board, saying, look, these are the folks that are running in my region that I think it's worth us doing an interview with. And when we interview them, then we'll be going a little deeper. How will you be the Faith in Place Action Fund champion in your role as Secretary of State, in your role as a state representative in this region? They're going to have to defend those questions. If we feel satisfied after they do that question, again, it'll be the Faith in Place Action Fund board and these advisory chairs participating in those interviews, then they're eligible to be endorsed by us. And at this point, we're still working on our fundraising. To be endorsed, this means we're going to run some digital ads in their districts. So you start to see that, hey, Faith in Place Action Fund supports this candidate because they're an environmental justice champion, and that'll be running on Facebook. Sort of like $500 per candidate, we can get a lot of word out. If we can raise more money for the Action Fund, we can do even more, continue to build this powerful base. But think about this. We're headed towards the June 28th primary. We're not going to endorse in the primary this year because we're getting all this together. We want to build up our advocacy board, get that established. We're going to do right after the primary some sort of fundraiser / debrief from the primary, what's happening in Illinois politics, what happened in the primary this year. And then we're going to start to launch this process where we do these endorsement interviews and start to endorse individuals come August of this year. So you can get involved in all of that. And then when we endorsement and running those ads in the November 8th election, I've been doing a lot of work of getting out the vote, getting our green teams engaged on the Faith in Place Action Fund side. Super exciting, right? We can figure this out between this primary and this election, we can grow this into Indiana, into Wisconsin as well, build up the advisory boards there, and continue to grow our influence for environmental and racial justice through the Faith in Place Action Fund. So this is Dan's lovely
Far Side cartoon.
Far Side cartoon. Do you want to say a word about this?
Yeah, whenever I do presentations, I like, because sometimes climate issues can be kind of deep. So I always add in some Far Side cartoons to kind of lighten stuff up. And I say this is like an early green team experiment in public transportation. And good thing, the person in the lower left is taking notes. So the next iteration probably will be better. And I always say, we've already invented the green wheel. So take maybe some partnership with us, and we can help move you past this type of stage and into something a little bit more advanced and safer. So we're always asking, what are some ways that you want to take action on climate issues, whether it's public transportation or other things. And then I think this is specifically towards advocacy, probably.
Yeah, so now's the time for question and answers. We're willing to take questions both on the Faith in Place side. I just want to make this clear, there's a Faith in Place C3 side, where we're doing the educational issues, working on the program, working with folks about understanding the solar market in Illinois, how do you sign up for solar, gardening, youth programming, water infrastructure. And then we're also working now on this Faith in Place Action Fund side, growing our political and lobbying efforts. So love to hear from you all. I think the way I want to do this is, if you have a question, go for it, raise your hand. But we're going to try to get a multitude of voices in. So let's try to limit it at first to one question per person if we can, and we'll kind of navigate that way.
My comment, if I may, to begin, the last several weeks we did a series called "What is God Calling Us to Do as Church?" as you know. And part of that series was to address what you began with, which is the distinction between a 501c3 and a 501c4. And I made the point, based on my best information, that any 501c3, including churches, mosques, synagogues, any 501c3, can participate in the world of politics within certain limits. And those limits are very clear, as I understand them. That is, 501c3 organizations, including churches, cannot endorse or oppose candidates or parties, and cannot spend more than 20% of their activities in public advocacy. Aside from that, 501c3s, including churches, synagogues, mosques, can indeed be involved and are often involved in the world of advocacy. Does that match your understanding?
Yep, and that's why the C4 side, where we are endorsing, is on the C4 side. Right. So that's, yep.
I didn't want people to think that Brian was saying 501c3s cannot be involved in political advocacy. That's within those very clear limitations. Churches can be involved in advocacy.
So I have a question. If, for instance, there are candidates that are supporting environmental justice, and we're really pushing for that in this community, can we have them come and make a presentation to us?
So I'm sorry, we mentioned that in the series. According to the ACLU interpretation of the Johnson Amendment, which guides this in the IRS code, houses of worship can have candidate forums, but they need to invite all candidates. And even if some candidates don't come and others do, as long as the invitation is issued to all candidates, then it's completely within the IRS what's permissible.
Thank you.
I'm done with my own question.
I love it.
It's more of a statement.
All right. Yeah, we got a question back here.
Yes, in regards to taking action, I've worked with the League of Women Voters in doing this nationally and in the state and even local levels. And also I've been filling out witness slips lately for state bills. And I find the witness slips very difficult, and they're tiny type, and you have to make sure you get everything in the right place. I find that extremely difficult. I think in taking action, when you would just have to write a note to a certain legislator and they give you let's say their email, it's much easier. And I really hope that in your arm of, taking action, that you make it extremely simple, because people have a limited amount of time in this day and age, and I think you want the biggest bang for your buck and for your input. So I hope that you're taking, make it simple for me.
I got good news and I got bad news. So bad news first, we're not gonna get away from the witness slips. The witness slips are a thing. So what happens is you're in Springfield, there's a committee hearing. There's certain legislators on the committee. The public there, our in-house lobbyist, Pastor Anquay, policy director, Christine is gonna be there. They're gonna be ready to testify. But the chair of the committee will read at the beginning, here's everybody that's a proponent and an opponent or neutral on this piece of legislation. What we try to do if we're pushing a piece of legislation is, and what they're looking at is the witness slips. And so if we have 2,000 witness slips that are proponents, it's a statement of power right at the beginning of the committee hearing. So it's really powerful. There's no other way to do it except for through the ilga.gov wonky system of filling out those very annoying witness slips. So what we have tried to do is we have a clear blog. When we send out emails asking you to do that, we have to make clear instructions. We try to make it as clear as possible, but we're stuck with that system. That's the bad news. Good news is what I showed you with the bill tracker and clicking on that link. With us, as soon as you put in your address, that's going to pull up your state rep, your state senator, or the governor, whoever we want you to target. With a very easy, it's going to autofill in a message from you that's written by our amazing comms team. All you have to do is click, enter your address, click send. That's gonna show up in the legislators, public records. They're gonna see that in their offices. Their LAs gonna be like, look, we had 1,000 people weigh in on a specific bill. You should pay attention to that. So that's the good news. We're making that side of the process easy. We're working with what we can do with the witness slips, but it's important to understand that the witness slips really do matter.
Is there a time in which the witness slips are more important than others? Because I've been given messages to fill out this witness slip, and I'm going, what's the trigger for that?
Yeah, the timing is critical with the witness slips. So it's not like you get an email, say you get an email from the Action Fund to say, we need witness slips because the committee hearing is Tuesday, the committee hearings happen on Thursday. You need to fill out that witness slip before Thursday, because as I described, that committee hearing is going to happen and people are going to gather. And then there's just going to be that moment where the chair says, we have 5,000 people as proponents, 10 people as opponents, 0 people as neutral. After that moment's over, it's part of the public record, but it's not as important as that, timeliness issue. The difficulty of working at this legislation at the State House is it's constantly evolving, changing. And this is where it's really important to have trusted insiders that's sending out email communications, so you all can see, oh, on the news they're talking about this, but when I'm getting from the Action Fund email listserv, it's telling me there's a little bit more going on. Now I understand. Here's how I can participate. That sort of thing.
There's one person online with a comment.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz. I'm part of the Church Green team, and I'm the head of Go Green Winnetka. And I was going to talk about witness slips anyway, so I'm really glad Eleanor brought them up. And I'm going to, if I may, Brian, I want to shift your message from bad news about witness slips and good news to good and better news. The witness slip process in Illinois is awesome. It's archaic. It's not easy to use, but it's amazing that we have it. It's amazing that members of the public have an opportunity to give input at this committee level when these bills and pieces of legislation are being discussed. They're called witness slips because you literally used to have to be in the room where it happens. And now, because we can do them electronically, we have the opportunity to share our voice and our opinions at these meetings. And so they're super important. And I worked actually really hard over the last year plus to figure out the process and try to make it easier. And so through our Go Green Winnetka newsletters, I've been able to create like links directly to the witness slips and give a quick how-to guide, which I know Faith in Place has too, but like how to fill out the witness slips. But to Eleanor's point of making it as easy as possible, literally, I will send you I'm putting these things together on a more regular basis now. And Chuck, the answer to your question about the timing of things is that the big picture stuff, and even this takes a while to figure out. The big picture timing to keep in mind is it's during the legislative session, which is January through May, typically. That's the time of year. And then there's a veto session in the fall where it may be relevant also. But then within those months, you don't know when the committee meetings are going to happen. And as Brian said, whenever they happen, you have a very short window to file a witness slip in support or opposition of something. And so it's something that Go Green Winnetka is working really hard to get in front of and pay attention to. I'm working at the policy level with a food scrap coalition, but that group partners with the Illinois Environmental Council, which is tracking every environmentally related bill in the state also. So all of those bills that Brian showed in their bill tracker are ostensibly ones that as they get to the committee level, to the committee hearings, Go Green Winnetka will be trying to get the word out about the opportunity to file witness slips and truly making it as easy as possible. Because I think it's such an amazing opportunity to participate, and it is a shame that it is as archaic as it is. But once you do it once, it's super easy. When you fill it out, you make an account and you do it once, and then it auto populates from then on. It takes less than 30 seconds to submit slips for anything after that. It's not that hard once it happens the first time, I promise. So Go Green Winnetka honestly is trying to help, and it's a really great opportunity to give input through witness slips. It's really unique, and take advantage of it.
Amen. Liz, thanks so much. Good reframe.
Thanks again for coming, because this is it's political work, but you mentioned things like the Sierra Club, et cetera, et cetera. This is beyond politics because of you're bringing people of faith together, and I think it's going to be a lot more powerful than even the Sierra Club can do. But what organizations are you currently closely working with, and which would you like to have deeper relationships with? You make me think of another larger regional, more of an energy trade association called the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance or Association. Do you know those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, feel free to chime in here on different groups. I mean, we work closely with Sierra Club, we work closely with Go Green Wilmette, and the other Go Green groups across the state. Other groups such as Environmental Law and Policy Center, Natural Resources Defense Fund. Some of our legal partners are really important because they bring the lawyer expertise to like actually drafting the legislation and making sure the legislation does the work that we want it to do. Citizens Utility Board is really key for us in understanding the, your comment bill, your Ameren bill, your provider, your supplier. We really rely on their expertise as well. I'm sure I'm forgetting who are some other groups, Dan, that we
you hit the main ones.
The main ones.
That main coalition.
The other thing to know is that we are the proud Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin affiliate of Interfaith Power and Light, which has chapters in 30 plus other states. And we also participate in their national conference coming up in May. So we're connected on the national level. That helps inform some of the federal bills that we're working on. We rely on them to really be watching in DC, where can people of faith make a difference. There's a whole table called the WIC table where people of faith and conscience gather in DC and are monitoring what environmental justice legislation is happening and how can we make a difference there. Our biggest focus as far as who we're not partnered with currently, that we want to partner with more, and we're actively going after some grant funding for this. This might even be news to Dan, so surprise. So we have an amazing relationship working multi-faith throughout the Midwest, working a lot with the Black churches. In fact, the Action Fund board is, I think, exclusively Black pastors working in EJ communities, helping inform and guide our lobbying efforts. In Waukegan, we have a couple of Hispanic, Latinx sort of partners, and our Waukegan staff person, Carla, is bilingual and does bilingual outreach for us throughout Northern Illinois. We don't have a big bilingual presence in Chicago. So we're going after some funding currently to hire up a bilingual outreach staff out of Chicago. We have a number of faith partners there that want to work with us. We just don't have the capacity currently to do that. So I'm very excited about that going forward in the future. Other groups that are important for us, and maybe this is too much information, but Evangelical Environmental Network is an important partner with us. We stay in our own lanes because we believe that the messenger matters. So they're evangelicals reaching out as an evangelical voice to other evangelicals. That works. We're much more a progressive faith organization working with other progressive faith organizations. That works as well. Sometimes that intersects. And that's great, but they're another important partner that we work with.
Where does your funding come from, both for your C3 and your C4?
Yep, great question. It comes from people like you all. So if you haven't donated yet, please do set me up. And so that's my job to do. You can look, actually, we just released our first ever digital annual report. Typically we mail out our annual reports. And now that we're all a little bit more accustomed to the digital world, plus saving some trees as an environmental organization. So you can go to faithandplace.org, look at our impact page. We have this very lovely flip through annual report from 2021. Where you can see all of our donors. Many environmental foundations support our work. In fact, last year we're about a $2 million organization. 75% of that come from private foundations. So this is foundations like the Joyce Foundation, the Energy Foundation, the Illinois Science Innovation Foundation, the Crown Family Foundation, other sort of, if you're familiar with the development world, the heavy hitters that fund environmental work love Faith in Place because we're so impactful. And we are organizing an audience that none of their other groups that they fund are organizing, which is really important. It's a value add for them. And then we look from individuals. Our houses of worship help support us as well to provide that funding for us to do the work that we do. That's on the C3 side. On the C4 side, the foundation world is way smaller. There's maybe 4. In the country. There's 4 in the country. We actually get funding from 1. That's how important this work is that we're visible enough that we're getting funding from 1. And the rest of that needs to come from individuals. That money that we spend on endorsing candidates has to come from individuals because of the H election and the way the whole thing works, which my colleague here is surprising me with his knowledge. I'm like, all right, I haven't met a pastor before, but that's what
So a 501c3 cannot donate to a 501c4.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. So a C3 under
That was a question, not a statement.
Under the H election. So as you said before, a C3 can, up to 20% roughly of their money can go towards lobbying efforts, not endorsement efforts, lobbying efforts. So our C3 does give a portion of money to our C4, restricted to lobbying.
Not
but
elections.
Not elections. And then the broader thing for a C4 is that 51% of your activity needs to be lobbying, not partisan. So there's another piece of that. So it becomes a math equation that's complicated. Don't worry, we're on it. What we do need though is individual donations, $25, $50, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $1 million, whatever you got to the C4 for us to do that work. So thank you for that question. You set me up to give a fundraising pitch, which I don't do. Other questions?
Can you merge your C4 with another big C4 foundation so that, this double whammy might bring in double money?
I like the way you're thinking.
Would you like a job?
If there's someone out there we're willing to talk about, we actually just went through this process on the C3 side because we merged with Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, a 501c3, in Wisconsin, Interfaith Power and Light, 501c3. We're now one C3, Faith in Place, the Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin affiliate of Interfaith Power and Light. So we went through a merger because we believed 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 5. That by doing our work together, we can do more than we can individually, and I truly believe in that. And I think we're already on the pathway to doing that. My board, of course, reminded me that sometimes in mergers, 1 + 1 + 1 can equal -1, and we don't do it right. But we've gone through a really healthy process, and assuming we can hire the right folks on Indiana, Wisconsin, this thing is going to really move forward in a very powerful way. So we're doing that sort of collaborative partnership work on the C3 side. I think it's a really good question on the C4 side. I don't know who that would be, but it's something that we'd be very open to. Yeah, in the back.
Have you thought about, well, we have a house up in Michigan. Have you thought about extending your reach up into Michigan? It's just straight north of halfway there already.
I mean, Well, let's talk. I mean, how much you willing to donate?
20 bucks in my pocket.
20 bucks will help. That'll help. In all seriousness, we did an environmental landscape survey of Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, as we considered where we wanted to expand to. We decided, so we looked at the strength of the environmental coalitions in those states. We looked at the faith partners in those states, what's the strength of the faith partners. And also, do those faith partners want to work with us? Because sometimes faith partners are strong, but they don't want to work with Faith in Place, because we're multi-faith and that might not be the case. And just kind of looking at the environmental issues in all three states. The reason we're heading to Wisconsin and Indiana first is one, they're our neighbors directly. Two, we actually really kind of wanted to expand into one state and take it at, one state at a time.
Yeah.
But folks in Indiana don't like the notion of Chicago coming in and taking over. Folks in Wisconsin don't like the notion of Chicago coming up and taking over. But if we're in all three states, that concern really goes down, is what we learned in our research. By being a tri-state organization, it just shows people that we are serious about organizing the region. And it's not simply us coming over. The other thing that's important in that is we were invited by Hoosier IPL to consider merging. Hoosier IPL called me up and said, would you consider merging with us so that we can do more in the state of Indiana? So we were invited in. That's a very important factor to this being successful as well. And then the environmental coalitions working for environmental justice in Wisconsin and Indiana are just simply less mature. So we feel like by hiring up, bringing resources there, we can really start to make a big difference. Michigan has a pretty mature both environmental coalition and an environmental justice coalition that's doing really good work. So someday we might be in Michigan, but as far as bang for the buck, initially we wanted to go into Wisconsin and Indiana for those reasons. Here's the other thing I'll just tell to you, because I can't help myself. Our focus here is 10% of greenhouse gas emissions in the country come from Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin combined. Those three states, 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. Now, from politics, you can't do anything in the US without the Midwest, right? You look at any presidential election, where they start in Iowa, how that goes forward. If you can't win the Midwest, you can't do anything. If you can't win the Midwest on policy, you can't do anything nationally. So simply by organizing three states in the Midwest, we believe we can make a huge difference there. That will have ripple impacts for what the US can do and how we can lead on greenhouse gas emissions. And what happens, how the US leads is how the world goes. So we really, my wife will tell me I'm pretty grandiose. I'm out here trying to organize the world religions to solve climate change. I get it. I have a lot of fun while doing it, but I see a pathway. Right? If we can organize and make it that 10%, we can make a difference nationally and across the world. Yeah.
So then just to follow up to that question, I think the key here is what voters are you reaching? What messages are you sending that aren't being sent already by environmental organizations that are organized? And it sounds like the key to what you just said, I hear you, I love the strategy. The key is Wisconsin, right? I don't think Indiana is going to change one or two of its senators, but Wisconsin isn't, right? And so which Wisconsinites are you able to talk to in a different way?
Yeah, it's why we're focused on Milwaukee first. We have a great relationship. So we're focused on Milwaukee first and Gary first in both states. Our staff, by the way, despite Dan and I being both white guys here, our staff are majority staff of color. Our board is majority board of color, and our audience as well. And our staff have amazing relationships already with the Black church in both Gary and Milwaukee. And the messaging is going to be pretty similar. We've actually collectively as an environmental movement done a good job of moving towards a justice and equity frame. That messaging is critical, a jobs focus, but the audience isn't being organized. And particularly working with the Black church in Milwaukee and in Gary is a good first step. I think that will also have ripple impacts like it has had in Chicago, where we started organizing in Chicago, but then we moved our outreach down to rural Illinois, semi-urban Illinois, and other urban areas in Illinois, where we've hired local staff to become the trusted messengers. We can do that in Indiana and Wisconsin as well. And that starts to create this sort of grassroots movement that really is organizing a constituency that isn't being organized currently.
And your message is a faith message.
Well, absolutely.
That's
Thank you,
a-
Pastor. Yeah.
That's a different message than other important environmental messages. It's a unique message.
Okay, man. I mean, that's what I should have said. Thank you so much. That's great.
I'm not telling you what you should say.
I'm interested in what specific actions or legislation pieces or whatever you feel like Pace and Pace has had the most impact on recently.
Yeah, I would, the Climate Equitable Jobs Act, which is the biggest piece of legislation that's passed for climate. I don't know how to not be hyperbolic in the nation in a long, long time. Are just focus and organizing around the workforce hubs and making sure that the jobs is prioritized has really been a difference maker. And I'm really proud of that, proud of our team and proud of our green teams who helped make that happen. Now we feel the accountability of, we got it passed, we got the funding. We actually, we passed the bill in, I can't think of the date, was it late 2021?
It was in the DDoS section.
Yeah, September 2021. We just passed what we call the Siege of Fix bill, and literally we had to rewrite 2 words in the law to make sure the money actually got to that program. That's really key. And our policy director, Pastor Scott Conway, was the lead lobbyist on that legislation. And you wouldn't believe how hard it was to change 2 words to what we intended it to be. And all the different interest groups came in, and that, there was dozens of different amendments. And at the end of the day, we shepherded through the 2-word fix. So it's just remaining vigilant to make sure that what we passed continues to be implemented in the way that we saw it.
I want to thank Reverend Brian Souter and Dan Hunshaw for being here today.